right, so I'm going to the same place you guys are. So you should see a screen pretty similar to mine. If not, make sure you have the project selected here at the top, and let me maximize my screen. It should help you see a little bit better. So everyone has been provided with a special training project. That's what the T dot is in this name. Those are just sandboxes for you guys to play in. You're not going to harm anything. It's not real, but it gives you the opportunity to experiment in a way that is very similar to what you'd find on a real project. So make sure you've got that project selected up here. You can actually click anywhere in the box and choose project, just in case it didn't pop up automatically for you. And
Mark,
yeah.
Mark, it looks like Michael was able to get logged in. Jimmy, Steve, or Jacqueline, were you all able to get logged in okay? You can give us a thumbs up.
Everybody looking good? I might take it as no news is good news. Everybody's able to get in. I hope so. Well, if for any reason you're not able to, please let us know. Otherwise, please follow along with us today. We are providing a recording after this class has ended. We'll go ahead and send that off to you to view as well. But it always works a little better if you're able to participate with us. Learning hands-on is important. It's more fun that way too. All right, well, let's just take a look at what we see here. And I'll break it down. I know it's a lot. When you open this, you're presented with a lot of information, but I think once your eyes adjust, you start seeing what we've got here. It's not so bad. So let's start with that middle section where we see all of this stuff, these sections. And I'm going to come right over here to the material sampling manual right on your very own site. I'm going to open one of the parts here just to show you. This is what populates the Headlight Sample Plan app. Everything has been pulled over, and all of those bars you see, each one of these is a section that corresponds directly to the manual over here. So all the information you'll find is ported over. We'll drill down into this a little bit more, and you'll see some other places where it's pulled information. So I'm showing you that so you understand this isn't a radical departure from what you've done in the past or what you process-wise anyway. It's not that crazy of a change, which is important. We don't want to throw any crazy changes at you. It's just arranged a little differently, and there's some nice features that come from it. So that's the middle section. Let's look at this left-hand panel. So we've all started here in this top left where it says nested view. Okay, that's the default view. There's one right below it called panel view. Now, the two views are functionally identical. You can use either one, but to kind of avoid confusion today during class when I'm trying to describe stuff, and I think to make it easier on yourself just getting started, why don't you just stay in the nested view for me? Once we turn you loose, you can go and experiment with panel view. Essentially, it's the same thing as this, but arranged horizontally across the screen. Right here, we're going vertically, right? Everything's stacked up. In the panel view, everything's side by side. And that might be better for you. Some people are going to look at that and say, yeah, I'd prefer to use it that way. I think clearer that way. That's great. That's why we included it. But for today, we'll just stay in nested view. We also have the sample plan checklist. So as you are in the process of building the sample plan, it will be reflected in the sample plan checklist, which shows all of the information you've entered. It serves as an overview, and it's a living overview because as samples are collected and incremented, you'll see the numbers will actually change right on the sample plan checklist. In addition, any changes you make throughout the project lifecycle will also be reflected in that checklist, which then syncs to the materials app. So the inspectors in the field, they can tap on that sample plan checklist and see just what you're seeing. There's some minor visual differences, but all the information is there. Same thing with the dashboard. The difference with the dashboard view is that it includes an actionable button, a button that can actually be clicked in the field to start a new sample based on what you've entered here in the sample plan. I'm going to show you that. In fact, I'm going to briefly walk through the process inside the materials for generating an entire sample from that one button press. So the dashboard is the active side of the sample plan checklist, if you want to look at it that way. It has something you can actually do. Tutorials, that's pretty self-explanatory. There's some great tutorials in there. I highly recommend you take a look at them. And certainly if you leave today, you have a couple of questions regarding specifically the software, maybe not so much process, but just what button does what. It's perfect for that. Anything beyond that, that's when you want to reach out to Phil or other support members to help you with those kinds of questions. But there's some really great videos in there. I think you'll appreciate those. Across the top, you see we have the current project. There's some other toggles and buttons here. And again, these just change how things are viewed. I would like you to leave them alone for today. That's something you can experiment with on your own later to see if, for me, this works better. But let's not add any more confusion than we need to. So how are we doing so far on that? That makes sense? So today, we're only going to go through a couple of different examples. We'll take it slow. We want to talk about the different steps and the different parts that you'll see. And honestly, once you know how to do one of these, you pretty much know how to do all of them. Obviously, there's going to be some differences depending on what section you might be working in the future. But fundamentally, everything we show you today is going to set you up for success for everything. So let's take a look here. Why don't we go to section 203? Now you'll see there's a little caret, a little menu drop-down icon here, right to the left of section 203, excavation and embankment. If you tap that, click that, it'll drop down and you'll see two line items. Okay, we have the O2 and the 3L. What we're going to do is we're going to build out the O2 section. And then when we're all done, I'm going to show you how that synced over to the materials app. And I'll show you how to clone that information to 3.0 so you don't have to start over again. Now let's take a look at how do we actually add these materials. That's pretty important. Well, look all the way over on the right side. You'll see this button over here, kind of a reddish color. Got a little plus icon. That's your add material button. So if you click that now with me, you'll be presented with a pop-up. It looks something like this. Okay. This is where you're going to search for the material to add. By default, there's this toggle at the bottom. Okay. It says show all materials. By and large, that might just be the best thing for you. That's if you know specifically what material you want to add. However, we do know that at the start of a project, you may not know what material the contractor is going to use exactly, what type of aggregate. These are the kind of questions you might still have, but you want to fill out the sample plan, right? So what you can do there is if you turn this off, like so, you can pick by category. So whenever you hear the term category in relation to any of these new processes, any of the Headlight software, this is what we're referring to. It's kind of a broad collection of what a possible material could be. It can sit in there as a placeholder until you know exactly what the contractor is going to supply. Now we realize that's a new term, new concept, at least in terms of how you're working, but we think it'll be pretty beneficial. That way you can keep moving forward, building when you're just not sure what exactly you want to add to the sample plan. For today though, we're going to pretend that we know everything. So I'm going to turn that back on to say, show all materials. Okay, let's all search for this. Let's search for plastic soil blanket. Honestly, by the time I typed plastic and soil, it had it all narrowed down for me. That's the great thing about that search. It will search any part of the term. So often, if you can only remember one word, you can get it narrowed down pretty far. It's a nice feature. For the sake of argument, let's just say we're going to pick both of these. This one to the lab, this one to the unit. maybe in real life, that's not what you would do with a plastic soil blanket, but that's okay. We just want to show you that you do have the power to select multiple entries like this. Now I'm going to click OK. Let everybody get there. Okay, now if you've noticed, when we did that, the pop-up closed, and now we have another caret icon, another drop-down button right over here, right next to the O2. If I click that, there you'll see there's a new materials section. Both have been added. It's got some default information that's been entered for us. You'll see there's columns here giving you that information. We can drill down even further. Each one by default had a test added to it already, at least in my case. If not in your case, no worries, because we're going to edit or add those in the next step. But there's an acceptance test for each one already appearing here. Okay, so once you've added that, let's go ahead and add another type of material. Now, you can do this in any order, by the way. You can add a material and then immediately start editing those tests or adding new tests, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do today is add all the materials I want for a particular line item first, and then I'm going to go in and edit or add the tests I need. So let's do that. Remember, to add a material, it's this big red button on the right side. All right, add material. What should we add this time? How about usable soil? Usable soil, like so. Hopefully you guys are all with me on this. I'm going to take this top one again, the lab usable soil. We'll skip the second one. We'll pick this third one here representing something that was going to the unit. And then we're going to click OK. All right. So now all of this stuff has been added. I'm going to go ahead and collapse this one down. So you can see we have usable soil, plastic soil, and the lab plastic soil. All right. So let's go ahead and start looking at how to add tests or modify those that have been added by default. Come right up here where it says lab plastic soil blanket. It will be your top line most likely. It is on mine. Now you see a similar button to what we used before for material, except it's kind of a golden color. This is what we're going to use to add a sample type. Now, you'll see the acceptance is marked by default, at least it is for me. If not for you, please go ahead and check that now and hit save. You'll notice for me, it said no changes to save because it had already added this particular test for me to begin with. No problem, that's great. So you'll notice now we have on the right-hand side, this handy little box. Got a lot of information in it. Let's just take a look. Well, it's got the bid quantity, installed quantity. You can't edit those. That's pulled directly from the sampling manual, as is the instructions. Now, I'd like to note right here that you should always check those instructions because there are cases where the information in the manual is outdated or flat out incorrect, or some other reason might mean the instructions aren't what you want. Maybe you have something specific about the project that you know from your wisdom of having done this before that isn't going to work for you, or you need to give a little bit more specific instruction to the units in the field. So that is where you'll come down here and you'll see for me, it's already entered. For you, this is most likely blank. It's remembered something I've typed, excuse me, in another class. So you can go ahead and type this in yourselves at the 1/1000th cubic yard sample sack to district lab or something similar. I just want to show you guys that you can do that. That's the kind of thing that you can put in there. Anything that you think would be helpful, because when the inspectors are out in the field taking the samples, they'll have the materials app and these notes will show. Now, I'd also like to call your attention to the 3 fields that you can edit here: conversion factor, rate, and frequency. Now, my frequency may look different from yours because I've edited it in the past. Again, the software is remembering. I've been in the same test project now for a number of sessions, so it tends to remember what I've done. By default, I believe it sets everything at 1 for everything. And that, in all likelihood, is not correct for what you're using in your project. So this is where you have to think a little bit. These 3 boxes are the 3 variables in an equation. The math is all being done by the software. You don't have to do that math, but you do need to know a rate and or frequency and or conversion factor to get you to the number of samples you know you're going to want for whatever the material is. So it might take a little experimentation to find how to alter this in the right way to get you what you want. I believe in a previous class, Les was talking about how, technically speaking, the conversion factor should be the only variable you need to mess with in order to get the equation to come out the way you want. However, it may not be as obvious if you're just using that one, so you might feel more comfortable altering the rate and frequency. I think Les had also said the example of it's 9999 represents an entire project, so 1 per project if I were to keep dialing 9 into there. Those are the kind of things you have to do. And then you can always check it. You can check into the sample plan checklist over here to see if that calculation works out to the number of samples that you expect for that given material. So that covers that. This last bit here is this error and omission field, and you can turn that on. So as the project progresses and you've taken these samples, you've done all that you're going to do, you may find, well, we were supposed to take 20, but we took 15, or we took more than were needed, or there was some other change. This is where you can explain that. And what's great about it, if you enter it here and it's saved, when you get to the end of the project and you run in that ATM report, it's all going to be in there. All the explanations, you're covered. From an audit perspective, it's all going to be there. They'll know exactly why things didn't line up to your original sample plan. So I would say in that field, if you're going to use it, just be sure to be clear and concise about why there was a discrepancy, because it is going to be on that report. How's that making sense to you guys so far? Pretty clear? All right. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have any questions at all. So once you've filled in all of this information, in my case, I've changed the frequency here. I've added this note. You can hit save. Now, in my case, I'm going to hit save, and it's going to say down here in the middle, no changes to save. For yourselves, assuming you've actually made a few changes in here, and I hope you have, you'll see right in the dead center of the screen, right at the bottom, it'll let you know that it's saved. Once it says that, you can feel comfortable. You can close this thing. It is truly true to its word. It is saved. And everything's there. And you can continue this. I mean, you can continue with all the different materials we added. Let's look at the plastic soil blanket here. This line down here. Same thing. I'll just run through this real fast because we looked at the last one. It works very much the same. Acceptance test is all we're doing here. Again, you'll see I'd entered this note in a previous class. See, it's giving a more precise and different direction than the base instructions. And again, you can mess with the conversion factor, the rate, the frequency, those 3 pillars of the equation to adjust the outcome of how many samples are going to be taken on the project. You can do any of those things. I'm going to hit save. It's going to tell me no change to save, but I'm paranoid. I always click save. I don't know about you guys. That's how I would do it. I always want to be sure. And we can go ahead and close that. And we can take a look at this usable soil as well. Same deal. We're going to hit that gold button. Pops open. Acceptance for me was already selected by default, so I don't need to make any changes here. I'll show you guys later what happens if you want to add another type of sample test. It's really not hard. You can literally just check another box. This is a great example that was provided to us of something that you might do a little differently. Something you might want to give some specific instruction about is taking that density if the lift was greater than 12 inches. See, that's another thing that was not included up here in the instructions. That's something specific that you wanted the inspector in the field to do. So if you'd like to go ahead and type in something there just so we can see how this works, that would be great. I'll hit save. It should say nothing to save in my case. And we'll click close right here. So you've done all this. If you were to go over here, and I suggest you go ahead and do it now, you can click on your sample plan checklist over here. And after a few moments of it loading, you should see everything that you've added so far. I'm not going to click on it here. I'm going to show you something better, but I'd like you to see it here first. And as mentioned, it will also be reflected in your dashboard. And I could click on that myself here, but what I'd like to do instead is show you the magic of what this is actually doing for the inspectors in the field by looking at the materials app. You don't have to do this. You weren't prepared to have the materials app open or anything. You can just follow along as I go through this. So I'm just going to switch tabs. I'm using the web-based version of materials, but it is virtually identical to the app that's on the iPad. You could pretend I'm out in the field. I'm going to come over here like so. I'm going to log in with my credentials, which by the way are the same. We're going to come in here and I want to take a look and see the dashboard. It's going to ask me to select a project. So I'll click on that. And here's that training project that I've just been working in. I'll click that right there. And very quickly, what do we see? Well, here are all of the samples that I've added, all of the tests, ready to be used with this new sample button, okay? So if an inspector is out in the field, they're only going to see on the dashboard that which you have put inside the sample plan. It's all there. That decision has been removed from them. They don't have to hunt for it. It's right here. And by clicking one of these buttons, let's go with the usable soil. Let's show you this. I click new sample and like immediately, like lightning quick, it started a form, the create sample form. If you've seen materials before, you're familiar with this. So much of it is already filled in. The project, my name, what is the sample type, the material. You'll notice that there's a few things for me to fill in or just as needed, but it just gave me a great head start. So all I have to do, let's just say, I'm going to make up a lot number like that. That's filled in, that's filled in, that's filled in. We can go to the producer. Let's say it's Beverly Sand and Aggregate. Product, not applicable for this, so we don't have to fill that in. Represented quantity, I mean, you can go in here and adjust it. I'm going to just say 500 just for the sake of an example. And you'll notice I typed that in, it adjusted the actual line item. There's only one here, so adds up correctly. This particular isn't a cement. It doesn't have a mixed specification. Plant, there's only the one. Okay, look at this. We're really rolling because now we're already down to what lab to send it to. So you can send it to, the district lab or unit lab. So I'm going to do both. This is the O2 district, or yes, the O2 district lab, unit 202. I'm going to say done like that. Go down to the tests. Now this particular sample, just because I chose it at random, doesn't have what we call default tests, but that's another time saver that could possibly appear. This button will light up, and if they click that, it'll pre-select some of these tests that are known to be most commonly run or most likely to be correct. They can still be edited, and we've heard from the lab folks that they like to take a look, and sometimes they know that certain tests are run or not run, and they want to have a say in it, and that's fine. They can absolutely be edited at any time. But if you click that and that's active, it'll automatically do something like that where it selects a couple of them for you. I'll hit done. I'll hit save. It'll take it just a moment. I don't have my location active in this browser apparently. Otherwise, it would show a nice little map and everything of where the sample was gathered. But you see, it's all here. It's got the tests, it's got the labs, it's got this tracking log. Again, this is familiar to you if you've been through the materials class, but if not, this is the power of the materials app, which is really nice. Everything's documented, just like inside SamplePlan, where we're talking about everything's documented, everybody's covered. Same goes for this. And it was that easy. All your work that you spent over here just paid off big time for those in the field, which in the end is going to pay off for everybody. That's the concept. That's, as Site Manager has aged and we're transitioning away from that, we need to replace all the functionality that it had. So every piece of that has to be replaced, but with the added benefit is the way things talk together, the way things sync in real time. That's why we're asking you to do this. And I think it is worth noting that we're kind of in an in-between phase because we still have to respect Site Manager. It's not gone away. Everything has to coordinate with that, and we're limited in some ways by having to only move as fast as Site Manager will allow us to do. So if you notice things in here, it's like, gosh, that sure would be better if it were like this or like that, or why does it work this way? Quite often the answer is because Site Manager is still in the picture, we can't yet implement feature XYZ. Okay, so you may notice that. That's fair warning, and we've had a lot of great questions in these classes about, gosh, I sure would like it if it did this or that. And for now, it's limited in certain ways. But as time passes and once Site Manager is no longer in the picture, I think you're going to see what we have today get even better. So I think that's exciting, at least to me. Okay, so with that, we'll do one more thing here with this section 203. I'm going to go ahead and collapse it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to clone everything from this line that says 02 to 30. Now, I'll check with you guys because there might be a difference here. For me, right over here next to the Add Materials button, there's really nothing going on here. You might see a clone button. I don't see it. And if you don't see it either, it's not a problem. No worries. What you want to do is just refresh your browser. I'm coming up here to the refresh button. You can hit F5 in most situations and it'll do the same thing. You do have to find your section again and reopen that. But what we have here now is the clone entries button. Very obvious, very prominent. Give you a sec to do that. And honestly, it's like 2 button clicks and we'll have a bunch of work done for us that we don't have to repeat. I'm clicking it now. Okay, and the pop-up that appears at the top, you can see there's 02. It's got kind of a pin icon. That's telling you that's the source that we're going to clone from. Okay, that's pinned. That's right there. Below that, we see 30. And if we check that, that lets it know that's what we want to clone to. Okay, you'll see a warning here. If you've already entered information into 30 yourself, it's going to get overwritten by this action, which makes sense. And I think ordinarily when you're using cloning, you'll know that you want to copy over everything and duplicate it. You can always edit it after the fact. That's the process that would work best because it's going to get overwritten. If you make some custom entries and then do this, you're going to lose it. So if I do this and I click OK, just like that, look at this. 30 now has all those materials. And if you've done it along with me, you should see the same thing. Everything got copied over, including any adjustments that you made to frequency, any notes that you've added, all of that's there. And I would suspect that most of the time that's perfect. But if it's not, you do need to make some tweaks, a little bit of change to the instructions or anything like that, change the frequency, whatever it is. Go right ahead and go right in and you can edit them. But at least the cloning gave you that head start. It's all about head starts with us, okay? We want to at least get you started. So as simple as that, we're done with that section. That's it. What do you guys think so far? What questions might you have about this? Anything striking you as unusual or crazy or difficult or whatever? You need me to go over anything again? We are going to look at another example. It's going to be mostly the same kind of things we've just been doing. It doesn't get much harder than that. Okay, well, let's run through just one more example here, one more section. Let's go down to 706. concrete walks, drives, and incidental paving. We're going to go ahead and expand that like so. Let's start with 43 here. So remember to add any materials. You're going to click on the red button here on the right-hand side, add material. We're going to pop up the window. Again, we're going to pretend here that we know exactly what material is being used for this. If you didn't know, you would turn off show all materials and just find the broad category that fits what you want to enter. And that will be the placeholder until you know for sure what they're going to use. So for this one, why don't you guys type in class M, M as in Mark, and we can take this top one right here. The PCC minor structure, class M with air. And we'll click OK. Again, we'll see the little arrow icon appeared next to it, letting us know you can expand. You'll see, sure enough, there's the material we added. Let's see. Let's add one more. And again, you could go ahead and start adding tests to the one you entered first, and that's fine. But for today, we're just adding all our materials per section per line item first, and then we'll manipulate those tests. So I'm going back to the red button, the add material button. Let's add Portland cement. And let's use type 2 right down here, 040, type 2. And we'll click OK. All right, now both of those have been added. So let's go back to this class M. Remember, the gold button is how you add the sample type. So let's go ahead and click that together. Now, because I've done this before, you'll see it pre-selected a couple for me, and that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to select acceptance and information only, just to show you how easy it is to select multiple ones. It's as easy as just clicking the check boxes, and that's it. And if I hit save, you'll notice on the right side here in the box, you'll see both types of samples. So you have the power to enter different remarks or error omission or whatever you need to do, even change the rate and frequency for the two different types of samples that you're taking, which is great. You'll see here, I've already added this custom note, kind of a reminder to them to check the slump, air, and temp, fill out that form. You can do that as well. And again, you can mess with the frequency. I think I've altered this one to be 200 in both cases, but you can set it to whatever you know is right. As we've been discussing, it might take a little trial and error too, depending on how you want to calculate this. It is doing the calculation technically for you, but you do need to know your inputs in order to get the output you'd expect. So, but no worries. It is easy enough to come back and edit these. If it doesn't look right to you, you can check it and come back and check it and come back if that's what it takes also. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. In my case, there's no changes, but for you, if you've entered anything, it should tell you that's all saved. We'll close that. How about we check out this Portland cement type 2. Again, the gold button, like so. For this one, let's set acceptance and scroll down and you'll see verification. Go ahead and select both of them. We'll click save. All right, once again, same deal. Each one gets its own section that you can alter. You can enter remarks, change the frequency, whatever you need to do. I don't have any remarks for this one in particular, but maybe you can think of something you want to put in there just as a test. Let you enter that. Once you've filled out both of those, once again, you can click save. It'll tell you in the middle that it's saved. We can close this. Okay, let's say that that's all that we were doing for that particular line item. But we know we have to do the same darn thing to this 6-7 down here. Well, we know how to save time here, right? I don't see that clone button again. And if you don't either, you just come up here and refresh the browser. It's just needs a little help so you can see it. Don't worry, anytime you see that something's been saved, it pops up that thing in the center where I've been showing you. You can be comfortable that nothing you've done is going to be lost by hitting refresh. No worries. So now I'm going to expand it again, and sure enough, there's clone entries right there. One click pops this little pop-up up, and you see at the top, the pinned one is the source 043, which is what we just filled in. We want it to go to 067. We'll go ahead and mark that. It's warning us it will overwrite anything that you'd already put there, but we have put nothing there. And it does tell you how many updates it made, how many inserts. All that looks right. We'll just hit OK. And just like that. And you notice too, you can clone from this one. You can just keep right on cloning if you had more to do. Now, someone in a previous class asked if you can clone from one section to another because there are materials that are duplicated between them. The answer is not yet. I know that that's being looked at actively as something that we can do. But for now, at least you have this much of a leg up on getting some stuff done within a certain section. You can go ahead and clone to your heart's content. And again, everything that's here is going to appear inside. Here, I'll show you the dashboard from this side this time. And if you'd like to, you can click on this too. Just come right over here to dashboard. Really, the difference here is we're inside the sample plan. We're not in materials. So you're not going to see the button that says new sample. But elsewise, this is exactly what they will see out in the field. And if you scroll over, it's kind of a long horizontal box. You may not have realized that. If you start kind of scrolling sideways, you'll see it runs on and on. If you go all the way to the end, these are those special notes that I've been writing in there or I had written in the prior classes that you saw in there. And if you've done some yourself, you should see them here, right here in the notes. All these columns should look familiar to you. Anything you've entered, these changes in frequency that I've done are all here. Everything's all laid out nicely. Now I just accidentally went back one step. But of course, you can always get back by using the nested view. And it's pretty quick, actually. Just to hop between them, you can use any of that to check on things. I think if I go to my sample plan checklist, you'll also see some stuff as well. You might see multiple entries. That's kind of remembering some of the stuff I entered before. Again, that wouldn't be an issue for you. And we'll go back to the nested view. It's as simple as that. And again, everything inside materials, I'm just switching right over to my materials tab. You won't have this ready, but that's fine. I just want to show you that everything that we just did is also there. There it is. There's Concrete Walk, all ready to start new samples with one click.